Cast your mind back to when Rambo was a person instead of a one-man army with a rocket launcher for a personality. Released in 1982, First Blood drops us into the small mountain town of Hope, where a quiet ex-soldier wanders in looking for a meal and walks straight into the worst week of his life. That soldier is John Rambo, played by Sylvester Stallone, a decorated vet with nowhere left to go and a whole lot of survival training. Standing in his way is Sheriff Teasel, played by Brian Dennehy, a proud local lawman who decides to run him off. And caught in the middle is Colonel Sam Troutman, played by Richard Crenna, the officer who trained Rambo. Today, we're counting down 15 weird facts about Rambo. First Blood that you've probably never heard before. And stick around for number 1, because a real arsenal of machine guns vanished off the set and the last people you'd suspect ended up in handcuffs. Number 15. Sylvester Stallone didn't even want to be Rambo. Stallone made Rambo his own, but he also almost turned the part down flat. By the time the part reached him, First Blood had bounced around Hollywood for years. Stallone knew that history cold, and a project this picked over struck him as a losing bet. But then he read the script. By all accounts, he received it on a Thursday night and got a call the very next morning. Stallone loved it, but he had one non-negotiable. He wanted to rewrite it himself. He rebuilt the character into a wounded vet the audience could actually ache for, stripped him down to almost no dialogue, and turned a years-long dead end into an action landmark. The reported $3.5 million payday probably eased the decision, but the money didn't make First Blood a classic. The guy who nearly said no, and then rewrote a movie nobody else could crack did just that. Number 14. Kirk Douglas wanted Rambo to die, then left the movie. Colonel Troutman was originally supposed to be Kirk Douglas. Hollywood royalty, top billing next to Stallone, the whole deal. Douglas got cast, got fitted, and turned up to set about 3 weeks into filming in British Columbia in full uniform. That's why marketing stills and early ads with his face still float around today. Then he started fighting the script. Douglas wanted the movie to end like Morel's novel, where Rambo dies and Troutman pulls the trigger. Bold, but also a completely different movie than the one Stallone was making. The filmmakers weren't budging, so they gave Douglas a day to decide whether he was in or out. He thought it over and walked the next morning. 3 weeks into shooting, one of the movie's biggest roles suddenly had nobody standing in it, and the cameras weren't going to wait. Number 13. Richard Crenna became Troutman in about 72 hours. One weekend, Richard Crenna was a veteran actor with nothing on his calendar. By the middle of the next week, he was standing in one of the decade's biggest action movies. The production couldn't afford to sit still. Cameras were already rolling, the schedule wouldn't wait, and one of the film's most important parts had gone empty overnight. They got Crenna's agent on the phone and offered him the role on the spot. The script landed with him over the weekend with instructions to read it fast. He read it, liked it, and inside about 3 days had flown up to British Columbia and walked straight onto a set that had been shooting without him. None of that chaos shows up on screen. Crenna played Troutman in a quiet, sad way, like a man weighed down by having built the perfect soldier and then having no clue how to bring him home. That steadiness became the exact counterweight Stallone's wounded Rambo needed, and it worked so well that Crenna came back for the next 2 films, turning a last-second fill-in into the only character besides Rambo the franchise couldn't do without. Number 12. Stallone hated the first cut so much he wanted to burn it. For a hot minute, Stallone was sure First Blood was going to be a career-sized embarrassment with his name all over it. The first rough cut reportedly ran close to 3 hours, and Stallone loathed it. Forget the lean, coiled thriller everyone quotes now. He described a bloated slog where Rambo wandered the woods forever, pontificating the whole way through. By his own account, he and his manager watched it, stumbled outside, and threw up in the alley. He actually tried to buy the movie back and torched the negative before anyone could see it. The producers had zero interest in setting millions of dollars on fire, so that idea died fast. Everyone went back to the editing room and hacked the film roughly in half, down to about 90 minutes. Stallone's sharpest call was gutting most of Rambo's dialogue, letting Troutman and Teasel talk about him while Rambo stayed quiet, a haunted mystery who barely says a word until the very end. The part he was desperate to bury became the movie's secret weapon. Number 11. Half of Hollywood turned down Rambo before Stallone said yes. Anyone but Stallone as John Rambo feels impossible now, but the part spent years hunting for a leading man, and half of Hollywood took a look and passed. Robert De Niro was in the mix early while Warner Brothers held the rights. Clint Eastwood circled it. Steve McQueen wanted in until producers decided he was too old to sell a Vietnam story. Then there's Al Pacino, and nobody can agree on why he passed. One version says he wanted Rambo darker, closer to the book, and walked when producers wouldn't go there. The other says he found it too grim and bailed. Same actor, completely opposite reasons. Dustin Hoffman passed calling it too violent. Paul Newman, John Travolta, and Nick Nolte all drifted through at one point or another. By the early 80s, the project had burned through more than 24 drafts and still didn't have its Rambo, until it finally landed in Sylvester Stallone's hands. Number 10. A Canadian snowstorm shut the whole production down. First Blood looks bone cold, because most of the time it actually was. The crew rolled into Hope, British Columbia, expecting the gray, overcast gloom that Pacific Northwest towns practically trademark. Instead, they got blazing sunshine, bright, cheerful, and completely wrong for a movie this grim. Director Ted Kotcheff wanted misery, and the sky handed him a postcard. Then it overcorrected. Come January, a heavy snowstorm buried the region, iced up the gear, and blew the schedule apart for a solid week. The mountains then kept the production hostage for another 2 months. A shoot that should have wrapped clean turned into a 5-month slog through mud and ice. All of that misery made the movie better, though. The freezing rain, the mist in the trees, the breath steaming off Stallone's face, none of it came out of a Hollywood effects budget. It was real, and it sold the one thing the story needed: Rambo utterly alone, fighting the cops, the mountains, and the weather all at once. Number 9. Rambo's knife was handmade and sparked a nationwide obsession. Stallone wanted a blade that actually worked, so they brought in legendary Arkansas knife maker Jimmy Lyle to build the real thing. Lyle delivered. The hollow handle hid matches, needles, thread, and a compass, and the grip was wrapped in nylon line you could fish with or twist into a snare. When the movie hit and the knife nearly upstaged the lead actor, demand went nuts. Collectors hunted down authentic Lyle blades. Cheap replicas flooded every mail-order catalog, and half the knife industry scrambled to cash in, kicking off the entire survival knife boom of the 1980s. These days, an original Lyle First Blood knife runs into the thousands, and the numbered ones from the film go for considerably more. Number 8. The novel was much darker than the movie. The movie plays rough, but the book it came from makes First Blood look like a feel-good matinee. David Morrell's 1972 novel features a Rambo who runs up a real body count, cops, civilian trackers, and National Guardsmen, until the town's police force is nearly wiped out. Teasel got a personality transplant too. In the novel, he's a decorated Korean War veteran with his own scars, making the story about 2 damaged men grinding each other down with no clear hero or villain. The movie flattened him into the puffed-up sheriff who runs the wrong drifter out of town. The endings split hardest of all. In the book, Rambo and Teasel gun each other down in a bloodbath with nobody walking away. Stallone hated that, so movie Rambo lives instead, which is the only reason 4 sequels actually exist. Number 7. Stallone really broke a rib during Rambo's cliff jump. The cliff jump is the shot everyone remembers. Rambo shoves off the edge, plows straight through a wall of tree branches, and somehow keeps moving. It hurt a lot more than it looks. Stallone liked doing his own damage, so while a stunt double handled the top of the plunge, Stallone insisted on taking the bottom third himself, crashing through real branches instead of faking it. The whole sequence was barely choreographed and half made up on the spot. On one of the drops, he slammed into a branch and cracked a rib, and the camera caught every second of it. That moment in the finished film where Rambo hits bottom, lets out a ragged scream, and can't catch his breath is not acting. That's a man who just broke a rib on camera and kept rolling. It's a snapshot of how action movies got made before green screens and digital doubles smoothed over everything. Number 6. Rambo's most famous speech was entirely Stallone's creation. By the end of the film, Rambo is done fighting. He stands in front of Colonel Troutman and comes apart completely, years of grief and rage pouring out in a scene that turned an action movie into something people still quote decades later. That speech barely existed in the shooting script. The original pages had Rambo surrendering in a short, tidy exchange. Stallone thought that missed the whole point, so he sat down and built the breakdown himself as a raw stream of consciousness rather than clean movie dialogue. To get it right, he conducted around 20 interviews with veterans and folded their stories into it, particularly the crushing gap between being trusted with everything overseas and coming home to a country that couldn't hand you a job parking cars. The producers didn't want the scene at all and had originally planned for Rambo to die. Stallone dug in and kept it. Without that scene, Rambo is just another action hero. With it, he's a tragic one. Number 5. Brian Dennehy refused to play Teasle like a cartoon villain. Dennehy was a serious stage actor who spent his career on Shakespeare and O'Neill, and he built Teasle as a real person rather than a stock bully. A proud, controlling small-town lawman who takes one look at a quiet, uncooperative drifter and decides he's trouble that needs moving along. Reasonable instinct, catastrophic execution. Teasle isn't fueled by hate but by pride, and pride won't let him admit he misjudged the situation. Every off-ramp where he could walk away, he stomps on the gas instead. It makes the standoff feel unlike any average action showdown because both men have a point. The scariest thing on screen isn't Rambo's arsenal. It's a sheriff's ego that would rather burn the whole town down than say the words, "My bad." Number 4. Rambo's body count is 1, and even that was an accident. Stallone was convinced audiences would never get behind a haunted vet who spent the movie executing small-town cops, so he pushed hard to make Rambo a man trying to survive rather than one racking up bodies. The lone death comes early when Deputy Galt ignores orders, hangs out of a helicopter blasting at Rambo, who hurls a rock at the chopper to deflect it. Galt loses his balance and falls, and Rambo looks genuinely sick about it. After that, he rigs spike traps that wound rather than kill, pins deputies where they stand, and wrecks vehicles to slow the chase. The sequels built a war machine, but First Blood is entirely about the guy fighting not to become one. Number 3. The movie everyone expected to sink made Stallone a legend. Rocky had made him a star, but every time Stallone stepped outside the ring, audiences stayed home. Nighthawks and Victory had both come and gone without much notice, and Hollywood had quietly decided he was a one-character actor. This was the test, and it wasn't just his face on the poster. Made for about $15 million, First Blood pulled in more than $125 million worldwide and ended the year as the 13th biggest movie in the country, climbing steadily through word of mouth until Rambo went from unknown to household name. Number 2. Stallone accidentally broke a co-star's nose, and the camera kept rolling. During the jailbreak sequence, Stallone spun to throw an elbow, misjudged the distance, and caught Canadian actor Alf Humphrey flush in the face. Humphrey, who played meek Deputy Lester, walked away with a broken nose. Rather than reshoot the sequence, the production rolled with it, which left them the small problem of Humphrey still having scenes to film with a very obviously busted nose. If you watch closely, you'll spot a flesh-colored band-aid taped across the bridge of it for the rest of the movie. Strangest of all, David Morrell's original novel features Rambo breaking a cop's nose during this exact jailbreak with an elbow. Stallone hadn't planned to recreate it. He simply misfired mid-take and accidentally filmed the book's moment beat for beat. Number 1. $50,000 in real military guns got stolen off the set. Filming in British Columbia meant importing a serious arsenal from a licensed Los Angeles armorer, since Canada's gun laws were tight even then. 2 M60 machine guns, 14 minutes and 16 seconds, 11 AR-15s, plus a stack of shotguns and pistols, all real military hardware plugged to fire blanks and valued at around $50,000. On the morning of January 23, 1982, the crew went to check the locked wooden crate inside a truck parked near the Cleveland Dam and found it empty. 47 guns were simply gone. Whoever did it knew exactly what they wanted, cleaning out the working firearms and leaving the harmless prop guns behind. The truck had not been left unguarded either. Canadian military reservists, the the same soldiers who doubled as extras in the film, had been watching it. The RCMP took over, security tightened, and everyone waited nearly 3 years before 3 military reservists were charged in connection with the heist. Cracking the case didn't bring the guns back. Only about 15 of the 47 ever resurfaced, and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police warned that a few minutes with a wrench could turn any of the rest back into fully functional weapons. And there you have it, 15 weird and wild facts about First Blood. Which one caught you completely off guard, and which one did we miss? Drop it in the comments, hit like, subscribe, and share this with a friend who can quote the "nothing is over" speech from memory.